what I would describe it as kind of a flight to purpose, or a focus on purpose, and a company's social standing matters more now than it ever did in the past. The commitment to diversity and inclusion, the commitment to sustainable environmental practices. So certainly there's stuff that happened because of COVID, but we're going through a significant generational shift in this country, with the decline in baby boomers, a significant wealth transfer, and emerging younger generations that value other things. And those things don't go away just because COVID happened.
I'm Amy Shore, and this is The Future of Insurance.
This episode is brought to you by Medallia, the market leader in customer and employee experience. Their award-winning SaaS platform, Medallia Experience Cloud, makes all your other applications customer and employee aware. Medallia uses proprietary AI and machine learning to reveal predictive insights that drive powerful business actions and outcomes. Leading insurers like Prudential and Zurich use Medallia to reduce churn, turn detractors into promoters, create in-the-moment cross-sell and upsell opportunities, and drive revenue-impacting business decisions. Learn more at Medallia.com.
Amy, it's good to see you again. Thank you for joining me for an episode of the show.
Hi, Bryan. Great to be here with you, and thanks for asking me.
And I do have to call it out for those watching on video. We talked about your background, your office, and yes, for some reason it's become like a celebrity in some of the webinars that we've done together, where people are like infatuated with what's on your desk. I don't know why.
Well, and this angle makes it seem like it's as deep as a bowling alley. It's really not. I swear it's a camera effect, but it's nice. So
we'll I think that's Rosie the Riveter. Is that what I'm?
That's Rosie the Riveter. And then if I move my chair a little bit, you can see I still have Mary the Bear sitting there in a chair, keeping me company as my supervisor. So
Mary is usually who gets the attention in the webinars. So your role, Chief Customer Officer for Nationwide, it's a newer title that a lot of carriers have just been putting in place over the past couple of years. I mean, you yourself, you got into the role about a year and a half ago. Is that right?
Something like that? October 1st of 2019. So not even a year and a half yet, if I'm doing my math right.
Well, and I don't know when this is going out, so it'll be somewhere around there. So we'll let your math stand either way.
Okay.
But it's really interesting for me, and actually for you guys doing it in 2019, 2020 is for so many carriers where they woke up and said, oh my God, actually the customer experience is the most critical thing that we deliver, because it just froze and lights go off. So you guys had a bit of foresight on that. I'm curious if there's anything as to why that transition was made to create that role, to put you in it. And you came from a sales and distribution background, running that for the P&C business.
Yes.
So that's a really, like, you were living in the field.
I was a road warrior. I was traveling the country, spending time pretty close to the customer, actually, if you think about it, because at Nationwide, we have two customers. We have all of our intermediaries and partners, whether that's property and casualty agents and brokers on one side, or the financial advisors and the brokers we deal with on the financial services side of the house, or plan sponsors. So I was really interacting with customers daily in my prior role. And so the role was born here as part of the thought leadership of our new CEO. So we went through a CEO change at that same time, October 1st of 2019, with our new CEO, Kurt Walker. And, we are a mutual company. Nationwide is on your side, puts the customer at the center as an obligation anyway. But he really wanted to make a strong point that the focus on the customer and putting the customer at the center was the first pillar of his strategic priorities for the organization. So he reached out to me about the role, and we both had to do some Googling. What is a chief customer officer and what do they do? But the important thing for any chief customer officer, I think, is to figure out what is it going to be inside of your company.
Yes.
Because it's if you think of it as a pie, the pie was already full. There wasn't an open wedge like that little Monopoly play piece where you could go, oh, my wedge is just going to fit right in there and it's going to be fine. It's about creating a space in the thought leadership pie of the organization to put more emphasis on the customer. And that's really what I spent the last year helping the organization do.
It was a year that it did push a lot of carriers to think very differently about this and to recognize, I mean, your point a moment ago about we have two customers, and this is a sort of artificial thought exercise a lot of people get into is who's your customer, and is it
Yeah.
your distributor, is it their customer, and who
Mhm.
says it that way versus it's all of ours. I think you can't serve if you say it's your agents and your brokers or whoever your distributors are, if
Mhm.
you don't also recognize your need to serve that end
Yes.
customer, you're not going to serve your
No.
immediate customer. So you must think of both. So I
Well,
appreciated that you said that.
I often put it in terms of we have two customers, but ultimately we all exist to serve the end customer because they pay all our salaries.
Yeah.
Everyone else is a recipient of their money through the entire food chain. And so ultimately that's who we all exist to serve. And at Nationwide, because we're a mutual, we often refer to those end customers as members.
Yeah.
And it helps in with some of our internal language to differentiate. But I would say probably 80% of the time, my effort and the effort of my team is really focused on that end customer, the member,
Yeah.
and improving those experiences. Because if you know independent agents and brokers or wholesalers or plan sponsors, they're looking for a company that's going to give their customers a good experience and not do anything to damage their relationship with their
Right.
customers.
Right. Yeah. Your job is to make them look good in their job.
Yes.
Give them the tools that they need to support customers. What were some of the things that came into focus in this very shocking and instantly customer centric world that we all faced last year? Because Nationwide was very, very active. I think I don't have the stats on it, but of all the traditional carriers that got mentioned in Coverager last year, I think you guys were easily one of the top three, if not number one, for the number of announcements and interesting things, connected car things you were doing, like all kinds of different activities. Pet insurance, you
Yes.
guys are number one in the country now. We're getting a cat this weekend, so I've been shopping, so
Congratulations.
I've been through your quoting process.
Excellent. Well, we could talk all day about that one, but
Yeah.
one of the interesting things that I learned in the onset of COVID, when none of us really knew what this was going to mean or how it was going to unfold, is the importance for us to come together as an enterprise and go to market with a little bit more of one voice
Mm,
to customers. And because typically when there is an event or a crisis, you can isolate it to one part of our business. So is it, a hurricane has hit the Southeast, a fire has hit California, interest rate change that affects retirement plan
yeah.
savings. And however, this was a catastrophe, to speak in insurance language, this was a catastrophe that hit every single line of business that we have and every customer that we do business with in some way.
Yeah.
So we stepped into a place of really unifying how we're going to respond. Um, and the team came together beautifully, but we had not had to do it that way across all of the different things that we do.
Yeah, and all of your people.
Yeah.
So, it's one thing if you had a big center in an area that was hit by a hurricane, then of course, those staffers
Mhm.
in addition to the customers in that area, but you're talking about everyone internally and externally are all affected all at once. So you're
Yes.
going through your own catastrophe as well, just in operations on the people side of it.
Hmm.
So it just makes it that much harder to
Yes.
be able to step up to the occasion.
Yeah, and I think that one of the things we had going for us as a company coming into that was we had really robust crisis response plans in place and to activate against.
Yeah.
Now it was a stretch to activate against it in all areas of the country in all lines of business at once, but we weren't writing a crisis response plan. Um, in February of last year, we had one that proved itself to work really, really well with regard to facilities and technology and all of the things we need to do for our people.
That's interesting because having been at a few carriers or seen enough of them internally, I was talking about the risk registers, and pretty much all of us had somewhere on our risk register pandemic or global contagion. And it was one of those things that it's always been there, or it's been there as long as anyone can remember. And it was sort of like, oh yeah, we have that covered, move on to the next thing. But then we all get tested. And it was interesting to see which companies actually had responses to fall back on.
Yes. Well, and you know, that muscle had been built. So, but when you're in the risk business, you ought to be good at responding to a risky situation. Yeah. So, and our associates really rose to the occasion. You know, I can't be more proud of how well our associates have done with this transition. And I think part of it comes from how well the company has treated people. So,
what are some of the things that became really clear in your role in this past year that, like, you know, maybe weren't known going in, but then it was sort of like, oh, wow, this actually is a critical thing we need to be mindful of, or really matters to our customers, either our, you know, our distribution partners or the end insured, the members?
So something that I think is a work in progress for the whole industry is now it has emerged that now more than ever, it matters that your customers can move seamlessly between the different ways that they may want to interact with you. And it mattered before, but it matters more now because of the acceleration that we're all experiencing in the digital space.
Yeah.
And so we refer to that as multi-channel or multi-experience integration, but that's a real emerging area of focus for us. And, you know, of course, just like across almost all industries, we're doing more remote, more touchless, more digital interactions with customers. But it was interesting to see also that we saw, for different reasons and different lines of business, more customers calling and the calls taking longer because people needed to talk to someone and then you need reassurance.
Yeah.
And in some cases, they're lonely.
Yeah. Yeah. Right. That was the most human interaction they had all day.
Yeah. Yes. So what we're seeing, just the stakes are rising, but it's not just in digital. I think the quality of the human interaction really matters just as much or more as it did before. And you know, on our financial services side of the business, for example, I mean, the interest rates were falling. There was an extreme amount of market volatility. We had multiple acts passed. You know, you had the CARES Act, version 1 and version 2. And so people were like, what does this mean for me? And what's the right thing for me to do? And so our people and our technology had to rise to the occasion of helping people navigate a lot of uncertainty.
So you look across the P&C business and the financial products. Right? So are you seeing things that are different between the two in customer expectations, or are the themes proving to be universal? I mean, setting aside how do I get my car?
Yeah, certainly. Yeah, there are some universal themes around, you know, the desire for easy and smooth, you know, touchless digital interactions. There's also this theme of reassurance and help me understand what's happening, especially for customers who have been economically impacted by COVID and trying to navigate those waters for themselves and their families. But then there's also uniqueness. So we're seeing, not a surprise, there was a pandemic of COVID puppies.
Yeah.
And lots of puppies. So we saw a mix shift in our pet insurance operation, as you mentioned, we're the largest insurer of pets, to younger aged animals. And with that comes, you know, a little bit different underwriting. You have to explain the process a little bit more, and you have different claims because you're getting your shots, you're getting your physical for your new puppy. So it's been there's uniquenesses, but a lot of similarities.
One of the things I would imagine is different is with insurance, with the PNC side, yes, there's lots of in-person meeting, but I think people have started to move away from that. They'll do it over the phone, they'll call their agent. Whereas in financial planning and financial products, so much of that was, well, let's sit down and go through your needs. And we're going to talk about life insurance and retirement planning and all those kinds of things that have tended to stay, at least for that big initial meeting, or maybe it's an annual meeting, they've stayed in person. Did you see that it was more on the financial side, trying to figure out how do we move to a more remote solution, whereas PNC maybe was already used to that, or people were less inclined to want to meet in person to begin with on PNC?
So some of what was pre-COVID there may also have been what was the inclination of the intermediary. But we have seen pretty fast adoption of remote interactions on financial services, whether it's the launch of webinars to do some of the education that might have happened in a one-on-one setting previously, the launch of online advisory materials, and then launch of we've launched an app that's got a lot of advisory and training content in it. So we're seeing the adoption in both places. And it may have been, as I said, intermediaries are having to adapt as well.
Yeah. So I don't want to make this just about last year. One of the splits I'm seeing is some carriers who are like, okay, we did all that stuff, we're done now, we're good, we caught up to the market and people's expectations, and others saying, hang on a second, this is a shift, it's not going to stop, and now we've learned that we actually can innovate and we can change. And I know where Nationwide stands on that you guys are continuing to move ahead. What are some of the things that you think will be building out, or will be even more important as we go forward, that maybe were discovered in the past year, that like the cat's out of the bag, and now this is the way things are going to work, and we need to invest further in this?
Well, I mean, certainly, again, I hate to keep overusing digital, but certainly the use of digital as a means of interacting with customers and providing customers not just ways to complete transactions, but ways to get advice and access to expertise will continue. And so we will continue to invest heavily in those spaces. And I think on some of the sessions we've been on together, I've shared some of the examples of what we're doing in that space. We will also continue to see, and I've seen so many interesting ways that different consulting firms are describing this, whether it's the flight to value or price consciousness or the focus on affordability. It is just going to continue to matter more and more to consumers, and a younger generation of consumers who are dealing with the impact from the economy and their student loans, et cetera. So the continuation of accelerating expense takeouts is going to be a factor that's here to stay. And then this what I would describe it as kind of a flight to purpose, or a focus on purpose, and a company's social standing matters more now than it ever did in the past. The commitment to diversity and inclusion, the commitment to sustainable environmental practices. So certainly there's stuff that happened because of COVID, but we're going through a significant generational shift in this country with the decline of baby boomers, a significant wealth transfer, and emerging younger generations that value other things, and those things don't go away just because COVID happened.
No, that's very true. That CSR push predates COVID. But yeah, maybe with more digitization, it means the message is spreading faster. The ability to verify it or to demonstrate it is moving faster, so it becomes more central. One of the things that you guys announced last year was more of the connected car activities. So it's a partnership with Ford. I know there's others as well. That's another form of digitization. and that's very customer focused because it's
Mhm.
them driving every day and more than just a dongle and what it's reporting for, acceleration and braking. What's the mentality there as you get into some of the more, innovative or tech first kind of solutions?
So I think I understand what you're asking. If I'm not, if I'm just rambling, put your hand up, redirect me. But so certainly we've been a leader for years in the telematics space for personal lines. We're emerging as a stronger leader in the telematics space for commercial lines. And the commercial use of telematics is really focused on safety and monitoring of safety. How often are the driver's eyes diverted from looking at the road to distract, to something else in the cab of the vehicle. So that will continue to rise. We see almost a third of our new writings today with customers are adopting either our Smart Ride or our Smart Miles, which is a pay by the mile program.
Yeah.
So we continue to see a rise in that. But I think you'll also see, technology mattering more and more with property coverages, both in the personal lines and the commercial space, whether it's the detection of leak. Non-weather water is a very significant cause of loss and impacts customers significantly. So you'll continue to see the rise of technology in property as well, and in even farming. I've mentioned on your show before, we're the largest insurer of farms and ranches in America, and there is really a sector that's adopting technology faster than in the farming communities.
That's interesting. I don't think the average person would realize that.
Mm-hmm.
They think farmers, and they maybe think, oh, they're not tech first. But my past, having worked at a texting company, farmers are actually a big adopter of that and wanted
Mm-hmm.
to push into it. Which that's not super high tech, but it was a barometer a bit on just the idea that no, they are actually more tech savvy or
Mm-hmm.
interested in it than you might think. What are some of the things that you're able to implement? Because it's an interesting space that it's commercial lines, but it sort of crosses a lot of the
Yeah.
personal lines feelings to it. What are some of the things that are going on there?
Well, some of the one of the more long-standing but effective is the use of the drone technology,
Hmm.
the use of satellite imaging for property inspections, for identification of risk. We don't write crop insurance. Crop insurance is a federal insurance program, but it's significant use of technology, of satellite and drone technology in crop insurance. And then as you think about the opportunity to, as I said, to monitor, loss exposures. So lots of use going on in the farm space and in the loss prevention space as well.
Yeah.
So when you think about the opportunity for someone who's doing risk management, loss control work to have an interaction with a farmer from a remote location, with the drone as the eyes, that's a pretty significant advancement.
Yeah, and it can dramatically simplify everyone's life because the scheduling is easier and
Mm-hmm.
you get the right expertise without having to wait for it or incur the cost of it or not have access to it at all.
Mm-hmm. We're really focusing on, regardless of the line of business, tech enabling our associates. One of the things as you think about, uh, 25,000 people are now working from home. We learned we made 3 years of progress in 6 months with tech enabling our associates. Even old folks like me are now like Teams, Zoom, webinar, or WebEx. We're ready to go. We're using the technology. We're sharing. We're using share sites and collaboration sites, and so accelerating the tech capabilities of all of our associates was really a part of this as well. And all companies are in this now.
And you guys, pretty early on in the lockdown days, made a decision about your real estate footprint
Mm-hmm.
that would be impossible without some of that enablement. So I know
Mm-hmm.
you're keeping your main campuses, but a lot of the other offices
Yeah.
or you're giving up your leases or have done so, and people are
Yeah.
working remotely.
Or have sold some of the buildings.
Yeah, that's
So,
yeah.
yeah,
That,
we
I
will
think we were
probably
the
get to the
first to make those
point
announcements.
where we'll have about 50% of our workforce in a work from home environment, and then the other 50% for when things settle down in a hybrid environment where there's some home work from home, work from the office. I saw an article this weekend that described the new work environment as phygital, PHY, and then the rest of it is obviously
Yeah,
digital. So you're partially physical, you're partially digital. So we'll have a phygital work environment going forward.
sounds like people are fidgeting, but yeah,
I know it.
we were bound to have some mashup of words that would sound
Hmm.
awkward to describe it. But that is, I mean, there are people who've come down on extremes about this, that we're not going to have any more offices anywhere, and others who say like it's a flash in the pan, people
Hmm.
need to be together, and the reality is yes to both. Right? There's cost reasons why it's better. There's responsiveness and flexibility reasons. But then there's also the benefit of those in-person capabilities when it's safe to do. I mean, I know right now, if you have people in the office, there's other limitations. Like someone
Hmm.
who said she came into the office to do a meeting and realized once they got there, they couldn't all be in the meeting room at the same time. So they were all
Hmm.
at their desks on Zoom anyway. So it's like,
Yeah.
well, why did we just deal with this?
Yeah. And I'm here today because I wanted to have really reliable connection
Yeah.
and zero chance that my dog was going to go crazy in the middle of the conversation.
Right. So those are the other reasons, right?
Yeah.
Our coworkers at home. Um, Amy, other than some of the digital things, are there, and maybe this is thinking further out, there's a lot of sort of dynamic shifts that get attention at all the conferences. Um, Things like autonomous vehicles, things like passenger drones, and other things, or the shifts in, do we travel the way that we used to for business or otherwise? So many of these things being done virtually now. Are people flying around as much as they used to? Are there dynamics that Nationwide's thinking about that are further out, but have an impact on the customer, their expectations, that you guys are maybe investing in today to gain insights on before it's in front of us, or thinking about and monitoring?
Yeah, one that I would share with you is we're thinking about how do we, well, let me rewind for a second. Our mission is to protect people, businesses, and futures with extraordinary care. So, how do we continue to think about the future for our customers in the space of protection? And what more could that mean? So a good example of this is, I'll go back to a pet example because it was an announcement that we just made this past week, which is a partnership with Walmart
Yeah.
and a way for our customers to get access to more affordable prescription medicines for their pets. So as we think more about holistic protection of whether it's the ownership of your home, the love of your pet, the use of your vehicle, the liability exposures that you have, how can we think more holistically about that protection and not necessarily mean something that we have to manufacture ourselves. So you mentioned earlier our partnerships with Ford and Toyota, and then this is a partnership example with Walmart. So we just continue to think about how do we have an ecosystem of protection around what matters most to customers, whether that's their planning for retirement. So our retirement plan teams, another great example of this is does a lot of education to help our retirement plan participants understand when's the right time to start to take your Social Security benefits. So that's not really a product that we're manufacturing or something that we can sell, but it is how can we continue to just help people navigate their lives and
Yeah.
feel protected.
Yeah. It deepens the relationship then.
Mm-hmm.
I love that term, holistic protection. And it does imply much more openness and willingness to partner and to think about what are different players maybe we wouldn't have considered otherwise,
Mm-hmm.
that could bring value to that relationship that we hold so important. Um, So I wonder, kind of on that more leadership culture kind of note, if there's a leaving thought you have around what we as an industry need to be mindful of, especially from your perspective, being customer focused, which has become blatantly obvious, I think, throughout the industry, of the importance of it.
Hmm.
So what parting wisdom do you have about where we're heading as an industry, that people need to be mindful of, especially bearing in mind the customer?
Well, I don't know how wise this is. You can give me a score after the after we're done, but I think it's at the end of the day, it still all comes down to the people we employ and our associates. We get this business done through people, through our team members and our associates. Now, the experiences might be delivered through the combination of a virtual interaction and artificial intelligence on the back end, but behind that are people designing the experience that's going to deliver. So, being very intentional about the culture that we create, the training and the support we provide our associates, and how we help them feel connected to and close to what the customer wants. It really matters. Culture and our people are the foundation of our industry, because we're not making any widgets.
Yeah, that is very brilliant, and it's a good reminder. And I think on the back of a year where it was, how do we take people out? How do we take paper out? How do we take process out and just digitize everything? It, to me, it re-amplified some of those early fears in like the mid-teens, where every adjuster was like, when do I lose my job to a drone?
Mm-hmm.
All of a sudden it was like, well, now everything's digitizing. So do we still need our staff? And efficiency, I mean, to your point before, we have to do
Yeah.
something about the cost base because value matters.
Mm-hmm.
That again can imply, well, what happens to our staff? And I love that as an ending point, because ultimately this industry is about those people who get up every day to
Yes.
stand by members, in your case, of the insureds who are facing the worst moments of their life or trying to avoid those moments.
Mm-hmm.
So it is really important.
And how the work is getting done is different, and how the experience is getting delivered is different. But um, there's still at the root of it is people who understand the customer, have empathy, um, and treat the customer the way they want to be treated.
Yeah, I totally agree. Amy, thank you so much for the thoughts and the time today. I really appreciate it.
All right. Well, thank you.
Thank you to Amy for coming on the show, and to the team at Nationwide for giving her up for some time so that to bring her and her thoughts to all of you. Great perspective from the customer point of view and that customer mindset that Amy brings. And it is interesting, beyond the technology or some innovations that are coming on the product side, which of course will continue. She's absolutely right for pointing out the way that we will also see, what matters to customers in the companies they choose to do business with. The values, the way that they engage with the community, support issues that they care about, how a corporate citizen behaves. These are things that are increasingly important to consumers. So definitely spot on from Amy to call that out and keep it on people's minds that how you are as a company matters. So thank you to Amy. A thank you to Medallia for sponsoring this episode, and to you for sticking around and listening. I hope that this was valuable for you and good perspective from Amy Shore. Make sure that you subscribe to the show, because Amy is not the only one I'm interviewing. There are plenty of other thought leaders and executives in the industry, and you don't want to miss those episodes. So subscribe in your favorite podcast platform or on YouTube if you're watching the video interview, and make sure you never miss another episode. So with that, I hope you find inspiration in this. I hope you want to share that inspiration with others and help your organization and our industry move forward. I'll see you next time.